Hi, I'm Pat McCarthy. I'm going to show you how to do an annual service on a stock lock recoil system. So at the end of the year, you should at least once a year lubricate your stock lock too and clean it up. So we're going to go ahead and go through this one and do that. So first thing you do is remove the pad. And in the back of the stock, there'll be two bolts, two Allen bolts in the back. The center one is for removing the stock from the pistol grip. The top one is to adjust the length of the lock to keep free play out of your stock. So this one rarely has to be adjusted, sometimes, but not very often. So what we're going to do is take that unit out of there and lubricate it and clean it up. So we're going to take the center bolt right there, and we're going to remove that. There has been a couple of updates on stock locks, and one of the problems with removing this stock is that if you are doing it in the field, if you turn this nose piece downward this way, what happens is this rod falls out and this ball falls off the rod, which isn't much of a problem unless you drop it in the grass and then you can't find it. That's kind of disastrous if you're at a shoot somewhere and you drop that ball out of there and you don't have another one to put in there. So the new stock locks in the last year have had a one-piece rod, and this, we'll take this completely apart here. So what's inside of this lock is these three pieces. Spring follower, so there's a spring inside here. This sits on top of the spring, and it goes in there with the point sticking up. So when you put it back into the hole, it goes with the point sticking up. Then the ball bearing goes in the hole, then the rod goes in the hole, and the rod has a cup cut in it, which fits that ball. So that ball fits on the end of that rod. The new rod is this rod. It's a one-piece rod, and it will not fall out. So you can put that in there, replaces all three of those parts, goes in there, it locks, will not fall out of there. It's locked in there, so when you take it apart, it won't fall out. The stock doesn't work any better with this rod, and the only advantage to having this rod is that these parts will not come out of there, and you'll lose them in the grass somewhere if you were working on it other than on a towel like this. But it works just the same. And it's a $25 upgrade to your stock lock if you want one. But this one works just fine if you're careful not to lose the part. So when you have this apart, after a year of shooting, you want to take a rag and wipe this off. Wipe all the excess dirt and grease off of it. Just wipe it up a little bit. Make sure all the screws are tight. Screws in the side plate are tight. This one doesn't want to be super tight because these are plastic, and if you run that screw too tight, you'll squish the plastic in there. So it just needs to be snug on there. And then it's reasonably clean. And the way you lubricate this is you take this rod out, and you take a little daub of grease, some kind of light Stoss grease or a synthetic grease, and you put it right in that hole, about the size of a pea, down in that hole. Wipe the excess off and put the rod back in, cup side down against the ball. And just push it in there and work it around inside the lock. That's all you need to do lubrication-wise there. And then the unit itself in the pistol grip, you want to screw the stock bolt into the bushing holder, and then depress it so that you can expose the rods. Wipe the rods off, all the excess grease, and apply some new grease to those rods. Doesn't have to be a lot of grease, just a nice coat of grease on them. Wipe the excess off. with your wrenches supplied with the stock, make sure that all the bolts are tight. You don't want to shoot the stock if it's loose. If the back end of it is loose or you can feel something wobbly in it, you don't want to shoot it because the tolerances are very close around the edge. Could crack the stock if you're too loose. So you want to put the wrench in here and just make sure they're tight. These bolts are Loctited, so they should be good and snug tight. Just check them to make sure they didn't come loose. And then if it's a American-made gun, it would be a 3/16. If it's a foreign-made gun, it would be a 5mm. But up inside there, you can see there's a bolt at the top of that guide rod, and it's got a ball-end Allen wrench. Goes into that bolt, and make sure that bolt is tight, good and snug tight. And then down inside, there's another Allen 832 screw. Takes a 9/64. You go down inside there and you check that, make sure that's tight so that this unit isn't wiggling. And that's all you have to do. Wipe off the excess here, that there's no dirt and grime on it. Take your buttstock and put it back on. Install the unit back in. Put the bolt in. Tighten the bolt, which would be the center bolt. Like I say, you very rarely have to adjust that top, is just the length for the free play in it, so you don't want to stick the wrench in there and turn that one by accident, because it'll change your length and give you either no free play or too much free play. Bring it up good and snug. Reinstall the recoil pad.